The Sahara Desert is one of the most underused places on the planet. At 9.2 million square kilometers, it's roughly the size of Europe or China. Europe has around 750 million people, China around 1.4 billion. But here, with brutal heat, almost no rain, and rocky, barren ground, only about 2.5 million people live, a number close to the population of Jamaica. And it's not just humans who stay away. Almost no plants or animals dare to make a home in this vast emptiness. So if virtually nobody lives here, why not build an artificial lake? Because, as it turns out, this place wasn't always a wasteland. Between 14,000 and 5,000 years ago, the Sahara was green. It had plenty of rainfall and a humid climate. The variety of life was so rich that fossils of giraffes, elephants, hippos, rhinos, tortoises, antelopes, and baboons have all been found here. Then, around 5,000 years ago, as conditions dried out, people gradually left the desert for places with more reliable water, the Nile Valley, Mesopotamia, and there they built the first complex civilizations.
So returning to those origins and repopulating this desert isn't such a strange idea, especially knowing that in several thousand years, the Sahara will be green again naturally. We could wait for that. Or, as some people have wondered, why not speed things up? The idea of creating a Saharan sea goes back to the 19th century. In 1877, a Scottish businessman named Donald Mackenzie proposed building a canal to divert water from the Atlantic Ocean through Cape Juby, which at the time belonged to no country, all the way to a region called El Jouf, lying between what is today Mauritania and Mali. This would create an inland sea of roughly 155,000 square kilometers, about the size of Uruguay, enabling commercial shipping and farming in the surrounding area. He also planned to connect it via another canal to the Niger River, opening up access to the markets and resources of East Africa. There was just one problem. Mackenzie had never actually visited the area. He had read about other desert basins near Cape Juby that sat below sea level and assumed El Jouf was the same, specifically that it sat 61 meters below sea level. In reality, El Jouf stands 320 meters above sea level. The project was impossible from the start. Around the same time, a similar idea took shape in Tunisia. The key figures were a French geographer named Roeder and the French diplomat Lesseps, who had led the creation of the Suez Canal just years before. Their plan was to build a canal from the Gulf of Gabes to a salt flat called Chat el Fajaj and flood the entire area with water from the Mediterranean, since that region was indeed 40 meters below sea level. The project promised maritime transport, a more fertile climate in the surrounding Sahara, and even an improvement in weather across Europe, enough to earn financial backing from the French government. But once again, there was a catch. Around 7,000 square kilometers of the target area turned out not to be below sea level after all. They had stumbled over the same stone as Mackenzie, and the project was abandoned. Despite these failures, a genuinely deep and vast hollow does exist in the Sahara. It just took a while to find it. The Qattara Depression is the second deepest point in all of Africa, sitting at minus 133 meters below sea level. To put that in perspective, that's far deeper than the lowest point in Europe, the Caspian Sea, at minus 28 meters, and even deeper than the lowest point in all of the Americas, Laguna del Carbon in Argentina, at minus 105 meters. And it's enormous, roughly 19,000 square kilometers, comparable in size to the entire country of El Salvador, home to about 6.5 million people. Here, though, the story is very different. Across this entire expanse, there are only 3 settlements: the Kara Oasis with 363 inhabitants, and 2 others so small that reliable population figures simply don't exist. With almost no one living here, this depression could theoretically become the 13th largest lake on the planet and the 4th largest in Africa. And unlike other Great Depressions around the world, Qattara has a crucial advantage.
It sits just 55 kilometers from the Mediterranean Sea. With so much going for it, the English geologist John Ball made a detailed study of the depression in 1927. He examined factors like the water flow needed to fill it and the implications of salinity, and suggested it could be used to generate hydroelectric power. The idea then sat largely dormant for about 4 decades until German hydraulic engineer Friedrich Basler picked it up in 1964, and things finally got serious. For 9 years, Basler worked for the Egyptian government, planning and seeking financing for the project. To fill the lake with Mediterranean water, a canal 55 kilometers long and 60 meters deep would need to be built. For comparison, the Suez Canal is 193 kilometers long and about 23 meters deep. Because the region is so arid, water would evaporate quickly, so Basler carefully calculated the exact water flow needed to balance that evaporation and keep the lake at a stable level. That constant flow turned out to be one of the project's greatest strengths, because it allowed for steady, reliable hydroelectric generation.
Basler's team planned to build the world's first hydro-solar power plant there, aiming to outperform the Aswan Dam, which was also being built in Egypt at that time on the Nile. The Aswan Dam has an installed capacity of 2,100 megawatts. The Qattara project, with 3 separate installations, would have had an installed capacity of 5,800 megawatts, which would have made it the most powerful power plant in the world. Until 1971, the record was held by a Soviet hydroelectric plant at 4,500 megawatts. The project was enormously ambitious, but it faced a serious obstacle: the cost of financing a mega-project on this scale. On top of that, millions of unexploded munitions left over from World War II still littered northern Egypt and would need to be cleared. So Basler, looking for ways to speed things up and cut costs, landed on a radical solution: use nuclear explosions to excavate the canal. He concluded that 213 nuclear detonations would be needed, each with a yield of 1.5 megatons, 100 times the power of the bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Around 25,000 people would need to be evacuated from the area beforehand. As extreme as this sounds, it wasn't a fringe idea at the time. There was an entire field known as peaceful nuclear explosions, and both the United States and the Soviet Union were enthusiastic about it. Under the American Plowshare program, proposals included expanding the Panama Canal and building a new one through Nicaragua, though none were carried out. Still, 27 nuclear tests were conducted over 11 years. One of them, in 1962, called Storax Sedan, was designed specifically to test whether nuclear blasts could quickly and cheaply move large amounts of earth and rock, exactly what Basler had in mind. The test created the largest artificial crater in the United States, and the radioactive fallout affected more Americans than any other nuclear test in history. The Soviets went further. They conducted 239 such tests in total. One of them, in 1965, was the Chagan nuclear test, essentially a replica of Storax Sedan. Like the American test, it dispersed an enormous amount of radioactive material into the atmosphere. But unlike the American one, it was carried out with the specific intention of letting the nearby Chagan River fill the crater with water, creating an artificial lake, Lake Chagan, in almost exactly the way Basler envisioned for Qattara. That lake, with a volume of 10 million cubic meters, remains radioactive to this day, primarily due to persistent radioisotopes. Despite official warnings, local residents still fish there, and some even swim in it. The Egyptian government proved more cautious than those fishermen. They rejected Basler's nuclear proposal outright, and the project came to an end. Even so, interest in creating this inland Saharan sea has never fully disappeared. The economic, demographic, and ecological pressures of the region haven't gone away either. Feasibility studies are still ongoing today, and it's possible this project will one day become a reality, just without the nuclear explosions.